Today on the Idiot's Guide, so you're 25, juggling a job, dating, maybe even thinking about settling down, or just trying to keep your bank account from flatlining. Sounds about right, right? Now, while brunch dates and weekend getaways are great, your 20s are prime time for setting yourself up for bigger goals like buying a house or traveling the world without your wallet breaking down in tears. You might think that after you've reached that quarter century, it's smooth sailing until your 80s. Actually, I don't think anyone thinks this, I hope. It's definitely not. But today, we're going to talk about ways to build the right foundations now that lead to legacies later. So let's dive into how making the right money moves can keep you thriving, not just surviving. I'm your host, Adam Richardson, aka The Profit Hacker, and I'm joined by the man in charge, Mr. Joe Haslam. Welcome to the Idiot's Guide. So I think one of the things that, I haven't been in my 20s for a little bit, but we really want to kind of zero in on that today in thinking about the choices that we make when we are of that age. And sometimes you might be wrapping up college by this point in your early 20s. Unless you're a doctor, then you'll be, wrapping up college by the end of your 30s. It's all of this stuff that you can really kind of look into. Like, I think about my financial decisions that I made back then. I was really dumb, made terrible choices, made some mistakes, and paid for them later. But I think, our goal in talking about this stuff is to kind of give some insight into maybe what's good practice to do, what's not good practice to do, and at least, if anything, just to give some or provide some, I don't know. Like I'm not really sure, exactly how to kind of intro into this, but
well, it's guidance on where you're going, where you've been. The last two episodes we talked about your teenage years. We talked about just very beginning becoming an adult at 18 and strategies to do. Now, if you're already past that stage, that sucks. You didn't do those tactics that we talked about. Hopefully, right. If you're in those stages, you're going to take some of that advice and be able to move forward and learn with that. And then we'll talk about how to capitalize on some of those older ones. The last two videos, some of those activities and things. Hopefully, that will lead you to a much better future. But if you're just starting out right now and you're looking, okay, I'm in my mid-20s. What do I do now? I haven't done anything.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember having a tremendous amount of success. I joined the military, so that was part of it. Coming into my 20s, I had already been in service for, 3 years because I joined when I was 18. So, I was into my 20s, I was going to school. I had two jobs. No, I had one good job. I was also in the military, so I was a reservist. And I had two cars, and I had my own apartment and all that stuff. It felt nice. It was really good, especially in my young 20s. Paying for college and all of those other things. That was pretty hectic. And then I got deployed, and that wrecked everything. But from that, my experience of being a diesel technician in the military led me to a job by 24 years old that I was working for Budget Truck Rental, and I had a very, very large amount of asset value that I was responsible for. So for Budget, I worked under special projects for the vice president of maintenance in Budget Truck Rental at the time. And so that was quite a few years ago. But I was 24 years old, and somewhere to the tune of 50 million plus asset value for me that a 24-year-old was responsible to answer for. And that's a lot of responsibility. Don't ever take on that responsibility if you can avoid it. But if you can handle it, then it looks really good on a resume. And I think that's really kind of what you're looking at now is you're not going burger flipping and kind of getting your feet wet as far as employment looks. Now you're going, okay, what does a career look like? What do I want to be? And I think for me, that really catapulted me into my ability to understand financial numbers a lot better, because that was, oddly enough, even though it was maintenance and diesel tech stuff, it was also numbers and tracking a lot of the numerical stuff to be able to do that. So it was kind of hand in hand.
Yeah,
so,
and in this stage, I mean, there's a lot of discovery going on. So you talked about it, people who are graduating college or maybe coming out of the military, whatever your stage, whatever, if you've just had fun for the last 4 or 5 years since graduating high school, this is the opportunity where you're going to be trying a lot of different jobs. Hopefully in college, you've tried different classes, you've experimented with new opportunities and kind of figured out what you think you want to do. But a lot of times what you think you want to do is not really what you actually want to do.
Yeah.
Because then you get out into the world and you're going to get that first job and it's like, crap, okay, I really don't like this. This isn't really for me. Other people, it's like, no, this is what I wanted to do. And you get out into the real world and it's like, no, yes, this is exactly what I want to do. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
My first accounting class was my junior year of high school. Before then, I had a completely different career path. And then I took that class and I'm like, oh, this is amazing. And I college and everything, went into that as a career, and it's exactly what I wanted to do.
I mean, when I was in high school, I took automotive, and so I did a lot of that. And then I went into college doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. I thought about being an automotive engineer. And then I figured out how much math that is. And it's way beyond math, so yeah. It's an uncomfortable amount. And honestly, when I think of automotive engineer or I can't remember it was mechanical engineer. That's what it was. Yeah. So mechanical engineer was like, it's not necessarily talking about the automotive field. And I really excelled in that. So that's why I shifted gears in college to go to just becoming a master technician rather than looking at the engineering levels.
Yeah, and so this stage in life, hopefully you've come to a lot of those realizations, and now you're getting into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah.
Now you're getting into the jobs. And if you transition jobs multiple times, that's fine, because you want to find what's good for you. And this is the great time to do that, because you don't have necessarily a lot of responsibilities at this stage.
Yeah.
You don't have a family, you don't have a lot of those things that are requiring you to do a job that you may not like. And that's an important thing. Make sure at this stage that you are in that position to be free. Otherwise, you're going to be locked in on that position that you may not like because you have to. And so it's really important that right now you're taking the time to look at these different positions, build those skills, and invest into your career, because you're going to be taking a lot of different classes. You're going to be doing a lot of different things, continuing education, things like that, to find out exactly what it is that you want to specialize in. Now, you mentioned doctors. This happens to doctors a lot. They get a general specialty or a general medical background, and then they go into specialty. And that's only after they've been in the career for a while and they realize, okay, yeah, this is what I'm really good at. And then they go into that specialty, whether it's like gastroenterology or endocrinology or whatever it ends up being. That's what they end up tailoring to. And that's essentially what this stage is all about, is finding that right career, building that structure, and just, you've got the foundation. Now you're building a little bit more on that foundation for a long-term structure.
A friend of mine that I've had a number of years been friends with him, he got a bachelor in science for chemistry. So like all this, and I used to make fun of him because we lived in Colorado, and I was like, so you're just going to go check carbonation levels at Coors? Like, that's your career path? Like, that sounds exciting. He, like, from that, literally his degree was that. Never once in the field. Never once. I think it was just literally, and honestly, like, looking at his like earlier years, I don't even know why he chose that, other than the fact that he's pretty smart. So, but he works in the stock market. He's like a big guy, big wig guy in some of the big firms that you can imagine. So he's doing fine, but it started way back in the day when he graduated from college with a bachelor's in science and chemistry, and it was really interesting. I loved picking on him, but man, that dude is successful. So
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where, like, during those years, even after college, it doesn't necessarily say, like, because I did this in college, I do this professionally, like that example I just gave. But imagine if you find something that you are good at and you enjoy and you excel, then it's finding and identifying, especially nowadays, the information that is available to us at our fingertips for free is only to improve and build upon what you enjoy, what you like doing, so that you can really, become the expert in that field.
Yep.
And when you become that expert, you basically can write your own ticket. So those are really good opportunities to kind of go, all right, not only do I want to excel, like I want to do a good job and have this great career, but I want to continue to add value to why I am in the position I'm in. And that's, I think for me personally, that's an everyday, all the time, process. But
Yeah.
That's just my personality.
And once you find that position, once you find that job and you start to excel, you're investing in your career, all those things, that's when you start the savings.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to be transitioning in time over to the next stage, which we'll be covering on our next podcast. But this is the time where you're building that savings, where you're building that, you're investing in your career, you're pushing yourself further, you're building that financial savings, you're building that investment pool, so that when you get to that stage, you've got the resources to be able to enjoy that part of life.
Well, and when you're making or investing or let's say depositing into your skill levels, then that opens the door for those newer opportunities, the promotion. So, you might be really good at customer service, but you don't want to stay the person that is just on the phone every day. Some people, sure, that's your bread and butter, and that's what you enjoy doing, is like, there is no responsibility above my head or below me. I'm just golden right here. I don't have to check in and out of anything else. But some people pursue that, where you can become a supervisor, a team lead, a manager, a vice president. Those are all really, really key positions within companies to make a difference and help that. And, developing your own skill level will always add to the opportunities that can come up because of it. So, it's though it's also adding, value to your skill level. I guess though it's also adding to your paycheck amount, so you can add to your bank account, and that's a plus to it. It's increasing your opportunities elsewhere. So if a business goes under and you get laid off, you are still a very valuable asset for some business because of those skills. So there's lots of different things that you can see because of the things you're putting in place and the skills you're developing right now. So, you want to add anything else?
Nope. All
right. Well, if you're enjoying this episode and want more tips on leveling up your finances, hit that subscribe button. We're all about helping to make help make the smart money moves that set you up for future wins. Whether you're saving that for that first house, planning a big trip, or just trying to get your finances in order, we've got episodes lined up just for you. So subscribe now. Don't miss out on any of the insights that future you will thank you for. So, I think the biggest part about your 20s, and I know depends on the context you live in. Here in Utah, where we live, everybody is in a hurry to get married. I don't know, okay, so purity culture, I don't know what it is, and that has jokes in and of itself.
I don't think that's necessarily it. I think one of the big things here is, we're talking about stage 3. And I mean, there are so many great things that happen in stage 4 of life. So we break these down into different stages, stages 1 through 7. But in stage 3, it's kind of just like this transition stage. And so it's like, okay, I don't want to be in here forever. I want to get to stage 4. I want to get to all this other stuff. So I think there's just this rush to get through this stage to the next one.
Yeah. And honestly, like I got, I hurried to stage 4, before my mid-20s. I was already in stage 4. Well, ish. So in this one, I mentioned at the very beginning, maybe considering settling down. How about let's use that as the application. I had settled down. Yeah. That was where I was at, but it wasn't until I made stage 4, which we'll talk about in our next week's episode. But stage 4 was, like, I made that by the time I was almost 30. So I'm good. I feel like that's good. That's a good middle ground. But right now you're talking about like, okay, well, I'm making money. I might be making decent money, really good money. I got a college degree, maybe I don't. I just have a successful path that I've really built for myself. And I start seeing that, but I think that people are cute and attractive, and I want to see if I could spend some extra time with them. Well, spending extra time with them means dating, and dating means that, I'm going to have to try to treat them to something nice. They like nice things, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, like that, oh man, like it's expensive. It's really expensive. And you're trying to show off how fancy you can be, and maybe that's a little bit too much you got too much fancy going on for what's going on. So dating, it's good to impress, but don't go broke because of it. That's really the biggest part.
Yeah. Fortunately, one trend that I see more now is there is more of a push on going Dutch in dating. So there is the idea that whoever asks is the one who pays. But more and more, we're seeing that it's more of a shared expense scenario, which makes it a lot easier than either the guy or the girl asking someone and then being required to pay for everything. Historically, it's just been always the men paying. That has changed now to hopefully being a little bit more equal to men or women, whoever asks, like I said. But again, there is this trend more for Dutch, where you pay for your own as part of that dating process.
I would honestly add to that the fact that it doesn't have to be like this wine and dine scenario, that, more and more people are looking for how creative you are as an individual. So, you're not thinking, man, I'm just going to knock your socks off by, how fancy this nice dinner is that you went to, and we went to this beautiful place that, they placed the napkin on your lap for you and made the salad right in front of you, right there, and you're like, it's whatever, like it's not impressive anymore. Like it's more of the intentional side of, like, it doesn't have to cost a fortune. You can go get coffee together and go on a hike, or, even in the idea of maybe if you're dating and you've had a couple dates, that you can consider cooking a meal together in one of your places, like that, stay home, cook a meal, bring ingredients and put that together at home. Like, what a cool interacting, element that kind of helps build a bond in that relationship as well, that you're not going to get from just this fancy dinner somewhere that you're trying to, like, it's too much dog and pony nowadays. People read through it.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to think about long term. If that's where you start, then that's where you have to stay. Yeah. And it's very hard to go back to, eating at a McDonald's for a date if your first date was eating at, Fleming Steakhouse.
Yeah.
You can't spend $300 on a first date meal and then go back down to $3.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't work. Now, that's not to say that having those really nice fancy dates is a no-go. For special occasions, if it's Valentine's, do a really nice dinner. Go out to a steakhouse, do something like that. But for your everyday, just have fun with it. That's what dating is supposed to be about. It's about having fun, getting to know someone. And that's done a lot better when you are in casual environments. You get to see who they are in a casual setting.
Yeah.
And that's much more financially friendly. And so you're going to be spending less, you're going to be using less of your savings, but at the same time, make sure that you're proactively planning for those activities. Just because you are living in a world where you may not have a lot of money or you're trying to set yourself up for the future doesn't mean you can't have fun.
Right.
That actually destroys budgets. There are a lot of financial planners out there who say, oh, you're not allowed to spend money, live as frugally, live, really constricted. And that doesn't benefit people in the long run. It may help in the short term, but in the long run, that is more damaging than it is saving because it's not sustainable. You have to plan. You have to proactively plan for fun.
Yeah.
That's how we live. Now, I'm not saying go overboard, but if you're proactively planning, great. You know that it's January 10th, and in a month, you're going to have a Valentine's Day dinner, and you want to take your date out for a nice steak dinner. Well, you got 4 weeks to plan for that. Set aside a little bit of extra money, set aside $100 a week extra, and now you've got $400 to go and have a really nice night out without breaking the bank because you proactively planned for that. If you're proactively planning, if you're thinking ahead, that makes such a huge difference for being able to do these really nice, fancy things, but also plan ahead for the small things. If you're going to be spending an extra $20 for a picnic in the park, then plan for that. Put that as part of your financial plan. And that's how you're going to be able to succeed in not just dating, but also finding people that are really good for you and understand your method of proactive planning.
Yeah.
And so more opportunities to really get to know who someone is and what their financial life is really like too.
It's really about just making sure that you're not just locking yourself out and keeping it down to this. I'm strict. I have to not have fun. I have to, not experience life. One thing, it's going to crush your dating life because, if you're not fun, nobody's going to want to date you. That's I think part of the thing is making that other person that you're interested in, making them smile, making them laugh. And, that doesn't cost much, but it takes some personality. And honestly, if you are just so locked down, I don't think you have enough personality to go date anybody. That's just a personal opinion. Maybe there's some charisma in that. I don't know. But hey, guys, if you're not aware, our Idiot's Guide podcast and channel are basically the podcast that we have on our YouTube channel. YouTube channel is called Hot Potato Finance. So for our fans, if you want to join the if you want to join the happiest tater community on the web, now is your chance. So for just $1 a month, you can become a spud and get exclusive access to us, your podcast hosts here. But if you're looking for more, you can upgrade to commentator at $50 a month for quarterly merch and the power to vote on your next on our next video concepts. Now, if you are feeling fully loaded, become a mash tater at $100 a month. Not only will you have all the benefits of the other tiers, but you can join our monthly Zoom calls, plus get shout outs in our videos. All members get a little gravy for supporting us, like having their names displayed at the end of our videos, access to a feedback forum, and for some, even one-on-one consulting. No small fry here. Wow. Truly, our members have the best benefits. So join us at patreon.com/TIG_HPF and be a happy tater today. I'm going to sit here and just bask in the atrocity that just happened. Wow. All right. So last couple, but not least, there's a few more here. But now we want to talk about some foundation building, because we've straightened out the career idea, maybe some self-improvement, skill development to really, cushion the career path. Now we got to talk about the application of trying to appeal to another human being and whether they're going to remain interested in you for whatever reason. Career path is important. That looks like, the reason why that's important, just so you know, is the word is stability. If you don't appear stable, nobody's going to like you. You're just a dependent at that point. Now, maybe culturally there's some differences there, but at the end of the day, most everybody looks for that kind of stability. So, a really easy way to look at that is that confidence in a career path. But then what? Now what do you do? Now you got to talk about the fact that all while you're doing those things, you have to start building the foundation for a future that you want to have, the future you is counting on current you to think ahead so that, your 20s are more like the foundation years for everything you want later, like a house, a car, travel, maybe even retiring early if you play it right. Right?
Yeah, retirement early is great.
I mean, yeah.
It's, when you're thinking about the long term, like I said, this is a transition phase of life. You're going from, teenager and early adulthood where you're making a lot of mistakes, and you're heading into the phase of much more responsible adulting, where you're responsible for someone else, whether that's a spouse, a partner, or children. You're entering into that phase. So this phase right now is you're going from that, more innocence to that more responsibility. And there's a lot that has to happen in this phase to be able to make it as successful as possible. So we talked about saving. We talked about investing in your career. Setting up a savings account, great. Yeah. There are a lot of additional savings accounts that you can set up. So setting up a future you account. And so you've got your regular savings, and then you've got your future you account. So you're going to be setting this up as potentially a separate bank account, but that's what you're putting into so that you have that set aside to develop yourself even in the future. And so in addition to that, you set up emergency funds. So you have your savings account. That savings account is going to help you to get the house, get the car, whatever those future opportunities are. The future you, that's if you want to get, more education. So you've got a bachelor's degree. Maybe you want to get a master's degree later. So that's going to set up for future you. Maybe you want to try other things, new hobbies, different things. But then you're setting up your emergency fund, which is a whole different account where now you're setting up for emergencies. If something happens that you didn't plan for, you don't want to take it out of your future you money. You don't want to take it out of your savings account. You take it out of your emergency fund. And so this is where you start that. I'm not talking about you need to have $20,000 in each of these accounts. Small amounts add up. Put $50 a week into each of these accounts. It's $150. It's not that much if you've got a good career. Even if you don't have a good career, start out with $25. $25 a week into each of these accounts, that's $75. It's really not that much. And now you're setting aside that money for the potentials for the future. And you're going to be in a much better position. And so I work with people that are, working retail jobs, and they start doing this. They're not making a ton of money. They're maybe making $15 to $20 an hour, and they're still able to set aside hundreds of dollars a week in order to build this potential for the future. I've got one guy, he's planning on paying off his car next year.
Yeah.
And he just bought it earlier this year because he's setting that money aside, and then he's going to have all that money that he is paying on his car payment right now, that then once his car is paid off, he's going to be able to take that and use it to buy his own place. And then once he has his own place, he's going to buy more places and start renting those out. And so he's taking that little bit of money and he's setting it aside for the potentials in the future, for emergencies that may happen if he needs to repair something. And that's the long term. Even if you're making a retail wage job or retail wage, you're going to be able to set that money aside and be able to build yourself a future. The other thing that's important to talk about here is building credit. And we talked about in stage 2, that's where you are getting your first credit cards. You're putting a little bit of money on there, maybe your gas, maybe your groceries, and paying that off every week. And that's going to help start that credit. This is when you're building that credit. This is when you're going to get that first car, get credit for that car. Credit is not bad inherently. Bad credit is bad. Good credit is good. And so you're going to maybe put a little bit more. Go on a vacation, put that on your credit card. Take a little while to pay that off. Because what you're doing is you're showing that you have strength in your credit usage so that you aren't going overboard. You're still able to pay it off, but the credit card companies are still making a little bit of money off of you. And so the important thing is here, it's not just about always paying off your credit card. Because then credit card companies are like, I don't want to lend to you because I'm not making anything on this.
Yeah.
And so you've got to show that you're able to, do a little bit of interest on that, but you're still going to pay it off. You're not going to rack up big bills. This is also when you're going to get some small time loans because you want to show banks that you're good credit risk, that you're going to pay off your loans, but that you're also using those loans. So it's a give and take here to be able to work with banks and credit card companies to be able to show, yes, I am responsible with debt. I can pay it off. I'm also willing to use it. Because if you don't ever use debt, you don't have any credit score. And that's not a good position to be in. You have to use and get debt in order to build that credit score for the future. And so you just got to be very responsible with it.
Here's a question about, like at this age range, because I did this to a point. I bought a car. It was a newer car, but not like majorly new. Yeah. And when I bought it, I financed it. And I bought it, through a dealership. And it gave me an opportunity to get an auto loan. But I didn't stay with the dealership's auto loan. I went to my own bank that I had a relationship with. And I think that's kind of where I feel like I did banking for years, and I always would encourage individuals, if you have your, what they call bank credit, it's a little bit different than your credit score. It's not necessarily scored the same way. Right. It just means that you have a good history with the bank, and so they have an independent scoring system that typically banks will have. Yep. And this is universal. Everywhere you go, they will have their inside scoring system somehow. And that just means that if I get an auto loan from a dealership and I want that to be part of my money that I have or access to my funds within the relationship that I've already established with a bank, then I'm going to try to move that auto loan over, because it's also going to merit probably a better interest rate than that dealership would even come close to, and make it more of a manageable, it helps manage the payment process. It kind of gives you the ability to negotiate a better term or the terms for that kind of thing. So, I started doing that early. I wasn't getting the top-notch, most expensive vehicles on the market. I think I started with like one of my first ones was, 2001. I had a Jeep. I bought a 95 Jeep Wrangler. So, just fancy, little lift. I could go topless. That was fun,
There you go.
But the reason why I say that is not so much the vehicle. It's just I was 20 years old. So coming right into my 20s, 21 years old, and I'm getting this, a credit scenario with my bank because of my auto loan. Not the credit card thing. I did stupid things with credit cards then.
Most people do.
But it's that idea where we're like trying to build small steps that aren't massive, not huge commitments, that if and that you can, they're smaller bites than, in comparison what my car payment is now compared to back then.
Right.
My car payment is actually not that bad now, but it's But still, it's one of those where, like, if you don't want to do that and you just want to get your car and then pay it off, you don't even have to have a car payment by this age bracket or this age stage.
I don't have a car payment.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, your car is paid off.
Yep.
So I'm getting there. I'm real close. But
but yeah,
the idea is just kind of aiming in that direction with responsible moves that aren't overwhelming, but are well managed. And it's basically on purpose.
Yeah, and it's building that because you want to buy that house, you want to buy that nicer environment, and so what you're doing now is you're setting yourself up for that future, and that's the key. You don't want to go overboard because that will detriment you later. You want to be in that good position where you're smart about it, not going too much to the extremes of either side.
So there's a word that floats around when you not nearly in your 20s, barely. You start hearing it when you're about my age now, where you're like, well, yeah, well, what do you want to, build a legacy for your family? And you're like, legacy? That sounds like old people things, And it absolutely is true that, like, hopefully you're old before you pass on the legacy that you've built. But you start that foundation for that legacy in your 20s.
Yep.
You could start it earlier if you're really ambitious, but it's that this is the space that you can have to make some mistakes, not really, not really have like this uber buckle down, no fun life because you're trying to build a legacy by 32 years old. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about having a better perspective going into your later 20s, about knowing you're building a legacy for the future you, or if you decide to make more of you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is where you start looking at, this is the perfect time to start looking at things like life insurance.
Yeah.
Getting life insurance at that age is much cheaper, and you can get good policies for the rest of your life. You're looking at your IRAs.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the IRAs. I think there are better ways to save, but it's an easy way to save. And so this is something that you can start putting into those IRAs. You can put into your retirement accounts. You can put into your 401ks, all these things that allow you to set some money aside for the future.
Yeah.
By having a lot of that set aside, by doing a lot of that work now in this stage of life, you are setting yourself up so that you don't have to work as hard to make it work later. This is all about being proactive, about pre-planning, about thinking ahead and setting everything up for the future. If you know you want a house, this is the time to start thinking about, okay, if I'm going to buy a house in 5 years, what does my down payment need to look like? How do I start saving today to buy that house 5 years from now?
Yeah.
And that's where the savings account comes in. And then you can break that down. If you need, let's say, $50,000 to do a down payment on that house, well, work backwards. You've got 5 years. That means that you need to set aside $10,000 a year. And so if you've got $10,000 a year and you've got 12 months to do that, well, that's less than $1,000 a year. You're probably talking about $800 a month.
Yeah.
And so if you've got $800 a month, well, let's just break that down even further. Now we've got to do $200 a week. $200 a week is doable. And so we just broke down how to get a $50,000 down payment just by setting aside $200 a week for 5 years.
And you have to realize, like, if you utilize things like IRAs or retirement funds or other more aggressive, funds to be able to put that money where your goal is, if you've set the target, you have that plan in place, but you're using something with a little bit more aggression in it, there's some that you could talk about, certain investments, different markets that you could get into. And that can, sometimes not be a great idea, but a lot of times there's some really, really safe, consistent funds that are just consistently growing at a little bit higher rate than a savings account would be. So that $50,000 gets gets there faster, not significantly, it's small, but without that little bit that you're doing that's just slow and steady into that kind of a contributing or that kind of an account, those contributions end up with massive results.
Yeah, they do.
So it's a really good benefit, and it's not something that I think one of the messages that we've kind of started with from the very beginning is just bite size. We're not talking about, sell the farm every single time you're trying to do something. Yeah. You're literally just kind of going, okay, an inch at a time, and you're going to find out how much faster you get that mile, even if it is just an inch at a time. It's being patient and knowing that, you already have that plan in place, and you just focus on the today, because that if you stay connected to what you do today, that tomorrow is going to look so much better. So, it's this thing, what we talk about today. So we talked about dating smart, saving smart, working smart, being employed smart, get a good job smart, 20s are your best time to build that future you dream. So it's really a great thing, but the legacy isn't built in a day. It's it's these little financial choices that you're making today that are laying the bricks for tomorrow's mansion.
Yep.
So it's really and honestly, like, the future you is going to be like, wow, I'm kind of impressed with myself, so whew, wow, I'm fancy. Yeah. So let's aim to keep the wallet happy and your future goals even happier. That about right?
That sounds great.
Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
All right. Jokes with Joe. Here we go.
Okay, here we go. Dad joke for this week. What is a door, not a door?
What is a door, not a door? I think I know, but I'm gonna figure this out. Let's go for it.
When it's a jar. You got that one. All right.
Funny side note. My wife wants to. She's always wanted to be that little voice whenever it says announces things. Like the voice if you go onto light rail, or they call it tracks here, and the door is open. It says the door is ajar. The door is ajar. I was like, no, it's a door. But she's always wanted to be that voice. I'm like, oh my gosh. Anyway, we've reached the end of our show for today. Don't forget, to like and subscribe. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Life's too short. So keep laughing and learning. And remember, idiots have way more fun.
Check your shoes.